How many of you remember a video with this old concrete mixer tumbling parts and spewing out dust? And it did a pretty good job. It's full of scrap iron. Unfortunately, it's a concrete mixer and it didn't do very well full of scrap iron, and it has some issues. For one thing, the drive sprocket system is so worn out that the sprockets need to be replaced, and this side's actually welded in, so I'd have to grind it off, and I'd have to do some work to fix that, and that could be done. But there's this great big crack right there in the bottom of this cast iron casting, and pretty soon it's just going to break off of there and it's just going to fall on the ground, and it's about useless. So that old cement mixer is pretty much toast for a cement mixer or a parts tumbler, and it's time to replace it. I've been without one now for almost a year since that thing broke down, and I really need to go back to it. I liked the finish I was getting on axes, adzes, holdfasts, things like that much better. If I tumbled them and got all the scale off of them, things looked a lot better. But I haven't been able to find one I could afford. I've seen some in other states on eBay that are local pickup only, and I don't want to drive to Rhode Island or something to pick one up because it's not very cost effective. I've seen some new ones on eBay that are about $2,200 with shipping. Again, I'm not willing to pay that much right now. I've thought about building one, but I've thought about building one for a year and I still haven't built one. But I found one in Strasburg, Colorado, which is about 3 hours north of here on the plains east of Denver. That is a price I think I'm willing to pay. It looks like it's in good condition. So let's head up there, let's take a look at it, and let's hope it's worth picking up, and let's hope we can get it running. Part of the problem is it's got a 3-phase gear motor on it, so I'm going to have to figure out a phase converter, or I'm going to have to put a single-phase motor on it. The motor on something like that isn't a very big motor. It's pretty low horsepower, so I can probably just buy a replacement motor if I need to. But I've got an old phase converter that I don't use for anything else, and if I can figure out how to get everything wired and if it all plays nice together, we might be in business in another week. So let's go take a look at it and see what we find and hope it works. Well, I decided not to bore you with video footage of the drive up the interstate through Colorado Springs and Denver and out onto the eastern plains to Strasburg, Colorado. It was a hot, long drive in an old, noisy truck, but I managed to do it, and I've got just a couple of little clips that we can look at of what this looked like there. Well, we got the thing loaded. I don't have any video of actually loading it, and unfortunately I missed the video of it going through its test run, but it took 2 of us to load it with the crane in the truck and with a forklift, and we'll mention a little more about that here in just a minute. But it is loaded up and ready for its drive back home, and then I got to figure out how to unload the beast. It would have been nice to have a little bit of footage of getting this thing in the back of the truck, but there were only 2 of us, and it took us both to do it with the crane on the truck and his forklift, because the forks wouldn't go all the way underneath this and wouldn't balance. We had to lift one end up with the crane, the other end up with the forklift, and work together to get it all loaded. Now, when I originally saw this listed for sale online, I asked, how big is it? Seems like a logical question, and he said 11-inch diameter hexagon, and it is a hexagon, and 22 inches long. I'm not sure exactly what he was measuring. If you open this thing up and look inside of it, and this is how you load the thing, by the way. It is 22 inches, actually 23 inches front to back. So that's the inside, or what he said was an 11-inch diameter in my mind, is really 22 inches. And the overall length is 35 inches. So it's considerably bigger than he said. When he told me those measurements, and I was looking at a picture of it just sitting out in the driveway and had no idea what to scale it off of, I envisioned this being a lot smaller. And I thought, it's just barely big enough for what I want to do, but it'll probably work, so I ought to go take a look at it. I'm really glad I took this truck, because I almost took the truck that didn't have the crane on it. And it's probably 4 times the volume of what I thought it was going to be, and probably weighs a lot more. It's going to be a lot more work to get it operational and get it where I want it. But once it's working, this should hold anything I want to put in it. So it's going to be a pretty awesome machine, I think. Like I say, it loads through this door. And I'm going to have to fill this up with some sort of substance to do the abrasive part, or to tumble with. And for the cement mixer, I always just use little bits of scrap, little cut off pieces from the chop saw or the bandsaw or by the shear. And it was just random junk, and that's probably what I'll start with. However, I have heard that the ideal medium for something like this are the slugs from a hydraulic punch, a big iron worker that's punching heavy plate, a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch plate, big holes. The stuff from road grader blades I hear is optimal. I don't know if there's anybody in my area punching stuff like that, but if I can find them, I'll see if I can get a hold of a couple 100 pounds of scrap to fill this up with. And when I say full, I mean probably about 1/4 of it full, and that'll tumble around with whatever I put in there. And we'll show how this works once I get it up and running. It's got a locking pin on here so it stays put while you're load and unload it, but you have to pull that out to make sure it turns freely. Little details. On this end, this is driven by a great big chain, so it's got a little sprocket for the motor, a great big sprocket on top, and a very nice chain guard. So this is actually a very well built machine. I don't think he built it himself. I think it's a commercial machine. And it runs off of a 3-phase gear motor. So I'm going to have to wire up a phase converter or a variable frequency drive so I can change this and have a speed control with the VFD on it. And I think that's the way I'd like to go, but I do have a little phase converter I could wire up and see how fast it runs without the speed control. He said it ran fairly fast without the VFD on it. Well, that's just a brief look at a new piece of equipment. Still going to take a little work before I get it installed. I might actually have to pour a concrete pad for it to sit on so it doesn't sink into the mud when it rains, because it will be living outside. It is certainly not an indoor piece of equipment. It will be loud and it will be dusty. I really wasn't planning to spend the kind of money I spent on this today, and I think this was reasonable. For the size that it is, I think I got a very good deal. The price really isn't that relevant as far as the video is concerned. But it's the kind of thing that if you don't buy it when it's available, you may not get another chance. There's some similar but smaller on eBay for about 3 times the money, and I just didn't really want to spend that much. And when this came available, I got it for less money. I had to spend a day to go get it, and I'll spend another day getting it set up. But I think it's going to end up being a bargain. So sometimes when you're running a shop, you just have to bite the bullet and do it. It ends up being a good thing in the long run, and a year from now I won't remember what I paid for it. I'll just be glad I've got it. So just a little bit of an observation there, if you will. It's been a long hot day today, driving in an unair conditioned truck on a hot interstate. So I'm going to call it a day and take the rest of the evening off, except for editing this video, which hopefully will be uploaded tonight. So I hope you have time in your day to get out to the shop, try to make something, try to be creative, but do stay safe, do wear your safety glasses, and we will see you around for the next one. Good night.